Hey everybody, or anybody. Say hi when you come on in. I am just kind of warming up a little bit. I never got a chance to really play much guitar this morning. I'm also playing with a new pedal. Next couple of these live streams are going to be me messing with some new pedals too, because I got some stuff coming. This is actually just the J Rocket Blue Note I got. This is actually the first time I've gotten to plug it in. And honestly, it doesn't do much, which is fine. So there's the amp, that's my Sir Badger, and then there's just the pedal on. And the gain is on like, I don't know, like 70% right now. So it doesn't have without that. Hey Jeff, thanks man. That's some of my favorite stuff to do is all those kind of oblique kind of bends there, especially the 6 where I can bend. I don't know if you can see this. My camera's kind of washing it out a little bit today. But any of those oblique bends, as long as you get them in tune, they're cool, you know? As long as you're making chords. Hey, Steve. If you guys have questions or want me to do anything specific, let me know. I can be your dancing monkey for the morning. I have part of tomorrow's video lesson here. I figured we'd talk a little bit about rhythm guitar if you guys didn't have much else to ask about. Hey, Parrot Head. Hey, Travis. For those of you guys who don't know, which is probably most of you, Travis was my friend from middle high school who taught me my first guitar scale. Travis was already awesome before I picked up a guitar. So I owe a lot to Travis. So, actually, one of the things I did recently is I changed guitar string brands. I've been a Gibson Vintage reissue user for years because I like the pure nickel. And they lasted long, and I like a lot of things about them, but they're really hard to get. They're also really expensive. They're still like $12 a set. So I tried Diodario's pure nickel sets, and they're a little weird because they're a little lighter on the lower strings. For the it's like 10 to 45, which doesn't seem like it's a big deal, except for it's weird. It's kind of slinky on the bottom, but the reality is actually it makes it a lot easier to play. Okay, so I got a question from Jeff. Those pedal steel sounding bends. So this is some of my favorite stuff. Hey Chuck, those bends. Let me give you a better view of just my guitar here. The biggest thing to remember is that whenever you're doing those, what we call oblique bends, which are kind of the pedal steel thing, you usually have 1 or 2 notes that are staying fixed in place. It's really washed out against this guitar. And then a note that's bending up to another note in a chord. So say like the typical bend is that guy right there. So I'm in the key of C. Right? And these 2 notes right here that I'm holding with my pinky are the root and the 5th. They're both chord tones from a C chord. This note back here on the 3rd string that I've got my ring finger on is the 2nd note of the scale. And then what you do is you bend that note up to the 3rd note of the scale, which gives you the complete C chord, right? All right, so that's the basic idea with these if you've never done them before. Any place that you can make a chord sound works, right? Now, one of the things that I got into early on was this idea that you could take sixths, right, which are notes that are 6 apart. Oops, this is actually an old question here. All right, so I've got these 2. So I'm still in C, right, and this is the 3rd of the C chord, and this is the 5th of the C chord, right? And even if you don't know all the theory behind it, if we're in C, like this is like a little D shape that we've moved up to C, or like here's D from like open D major, D, D flat, C. Right, so those 2 notes are out of that C chord, or C7. When I bend it up, the note on the 1st string just naturally goes up a half step to the F, and then the note on the 3rd string goes up a whole step to the C, which are the next notes in the scale, and then bring it back. So yeah, so you're bending to a chord tone. Usually, a lot of these are bending up to the major 3rd. I like this one here, so it's the same 2 static notes. There's that 3rd. I'll pre-bend that one so it's on the 4th, and then bring it down. Oops. All right, I like that one a lot, and that's basically bringing you down to the major 3rd, but from the 4th. All right. Then it gets a nice resolution for the end of a tune. Another one is I could take these two. So we've got the root and the 5th here. Same 2 notes there. We actually talked about this with the Chuck Berry lesson a couple weeks ago. But I could play the 9th or the 2nd from down here. I can do it. All right, and that's usually pretty hard to get in the beginning because you have to bend the 1st finger without bending the rest of the strings. Once you get it, it's pretty cool though. Travis loves that one. So that's at the core of it. If you could find any chord shape you like, and then pick one note away from it that you can bend into the other chord tone shape, you've basically got these things. So they're fun. I use them a lot because I really like thicker textures when I solo. So, you know, I'm playing melodies. You know, things like that guy right there. I'm using 3rds here. Right, but actually let me tune. I put these strings on last night and they're not completely stretched in. And one thing about it's kind of funny because I always make the joke that if you're hi John Doe, if you're bending in tune, it's country music. If you're bending slightly flat, it's blues. And it's kind of funny, but it's also kind of true because all these bends, they have to be clean sounding because basically what these bends are is it's like a pedal steel. Right, whereas with a blues bend, you kind of like playing in the spaces between the notes. Right. All that's, and even that's a little bit too clean sounding. But the idea with the blues stuff is that you want it to be a little greasier. You want it to have a little bit more. Right. So a lot of times I'll bend from that 3rd, and I'll bend from the minor 3rd, and bend halfway to the major 3rd. Right. That sounds bluesier than me going. All right. That just sounds like we're back in country land. All right. So it's not that you're playing out of tune on purpose, but you're kind of you're targeting these notes a little bit differently based on the style. All right. I had a question back here. Pedal steel. Okay, other parts of that, my fake country sound sounds like Peace Train. I gotta listen to Peace Train now. Late for the. Other things that I like is, you know, you can, because a lot of times you're emulating a pedal steel with the stuff that I like to do. These aren't the only devices for country guitar, but they're the ones I like to steal and put in my blues and rock playing. If you can use 6th chords, right, that works really good too. So here's a C major chord, all right, here's the root and the 3rd of the C, and then instead of playing the 5th like we were doing on those bends, I'll play the 6th note of the scale, which is the A right here. So it actually looks, hey Ron, another high school friend, wow, and Terry. All right, so if I take that chord shape, awesome, Jeff, I'm glad, which looks like an A minor, and slide it down like that, you actually get this, it's a real kind of cool bluesy thing that ends up on the minor 7, the 9, and the 5th. All right, it almost sounds more like big bandy, which I really like. So cool. Any other questions? This is good. Actually, we're getting a lot of questions right off the bat. For the Sky by Jackson run, I will do that. Travis has been over a lifetime of playing guitar, he's been kind of a little bit of a mentor, spiritual guitar mentor for me. And then about a decade ago, I repaid him back by giving him a Sir guitar, a exotic EP booster, and a Gorilla amp to play a gig through. Which he still made sound like Wayne Allman, so. All right, a couple other bits of business today. If you guys have questions, just line them up. I'm cool. I'm actually excited about answering questions this morning. The next couple video lessons, one of them is going to be about 16th note strumming. Probably two of them, 16th note strumming mechanics. We're going to talk about power chord construction, not just regular power chords, right? But also string shapes like this one, more like the Eric Johnson-y kind of things, right? That kind of stuff is always kind of interesting because texturally it's different. Just like when we do the Eric Johnson open triads, you know, actually playing the we'll call them Eric Johnson power chords is kind of cool. Even like the that kind of, man, this guitar's not. Let's stretch these strings real quick. These my Gibson strings, I could throw them on and just go ahead and play. You're not really worried about tuning. The Dioderos take a little bit longer to stretch in. But I like them. It's the first time I've 38 special. So anyway, the power chord thing, it'll be interesting. Overall, the pre-made video lesson plan, because this also corresponds with my conservatory curriculum. It'll be power chords, talking and movable shapes in general. There'll be a thing on bar chords in general, and then other movable chord shapes. We'll have a second 16th note strumming thing, like the mechanics on 16th notes. And then after that, I'm probably going to loosen it up a little bit and talk about other things. So I'm always open to questions and suggestions for where to do the lessons. My channel this year has basically been about serving my middle and high school conservatory students. And it's all fundamental stuff, which is cool. At a certain point, I'll be out of that area, and then I'll have room for other topics, more advanced topics, if you guys want. Okay, so let's go through this. Crystal Glass and some Mad Dog 2020. Oof. Thank you, Travis. You too, actually. This will be a mutual love fest between me and Travis. Yeah, inverted power chords, all that stuff. We're going to cover all that kind of stuff. It'll be fun. Okay. Jeff. The thought process, I'm traveling all the way up the neck and way back. So actually, a lot of the stuff when I'm moving laterally, it's because I've taken some time and I've kind of mapped out some ideas. A lot of the lesson, I don't know how familiar you are with the lessons on the channel, but a lot of the stuff that we've done, we've started off by talking about the cage system stuff, and then we've used it as kind of a stepping stone into thinking about things a little bit differently. Because the cage system by itself is useful to learn little chunks of the fretboard, but it also kind of can entrap you. And a lot of people learn to scale and then not be able to move around. For me, the idea of being able to move up and down the fretboard is really important, because what you end up having are these diagonal lines. Even if we just take like a minor pentatonic scale, and the idea that I can play an idea in one of those octaves, and then move it down or up, and actually answer it or complete the phrase is really important. You know, music to me sounds more musical on the diagonal, even if I'm playing like, you know, here's my backing track here. Can you guys hear this okay? Oh, I'm in C. Right. Right, I'll take ideas and make sure I can play them in a couple octaves. All right, and then out of the scale patterns, all right, I'll be able to kind of move around where I hear the phrase next. You kind of get to a point where it's not about knowing the scale pattern as much as like hearing an idea and being able to find it on the fretboard without thinking about the scale pattern. That takes a while though, because you're training not only your fingers to know where those notes are all over the fretboard, but you're also training them to basically hear what your brain is thinking, and then take that information and make it happen on the fretboard. Give me just a second here. Oh. Anyway, does that answer your question? So, like one of my favorite ways to get people thinking about this. Let's get rid of the track. By the way, are you guys good with the volume of the track and the guitar today? I'm kind of experimenting with some different stuff. So say we're playing in C major, which is where I was at. And it's a major pentatonic sound is what I'm thinking about. All right, what I'll do, actually we'll write this out on the... blank neck paper. Let's erase last week's lesson. Give me a second. It's like I'm erasing the chalkboard in my classroom here. Oops. So Jeff, the idea here is I'll take an idea and make sure that I can play it in other places, not just in the fretboard, and I know what those notes are relative to the starting point. So say I'm playing in C major, and that's the root right there. Turn the backing track down slightly. Okay. So that's C right there. What I can do is I can take a chunk of that pentatonic scale, and I know this, I don't know if you know this, but just take where I'll have this chunk. It's the 5th note, the 6th note of the scale on that string, the root, 2, and 3 on that string. So that's major pentatonic, but it's just this weird little box. Oh, you know what would help is if you could actually see the fretboard. There we go. Sorry about that. All right, so I've got that chunk of the fretboard, and I'll call this a 2-3 scale pattern, or 3-2 if we're doing minor. But I've got that much of the fretboard, and then I can kind of continue this up. So I've got that chunk, and I'll do these in different colors so you can kind of see where the cells replicate. 5, 6, root, 2, 3. So anything I play, oops, in the up here, I can also play in that green area here. So I'm able to, you know, all right, so that's 6, root, 2, bending it up, and then back to the root. And I can repeat it here in that position, any place, because I know what those notes are relative to the root now. And then in this third position, we'll go purple. We've got 5, 6, root, 2, 3. Now this isn't the end all be all for knowing this stuff, but what it does do, actually if I turn this sideways you'll get a better view of what's going on here. What ends up happening is that I can actually play through that diagonal on the fretboard, and I can make my phrases a little bit more developed. Right, and I can, you know, if I need to just, you know, play a really long phrase, I can do it that way too. Does that make sense? All right, so if now that I've done that, let's bring the backing track back for a second. All right, so here I am. I can play the same idea, and those 2 octaves are, because it's 5, 6, root, root, 5. Exactly, yeah. All right, you can do that with any idea. I mean, honestly, if I wanted to make this pattern minor, so let's get rid of the backing track for a second here. So this is C major here. But the same group of notes can also be A minor. If we just think about something else as being the root, right? So here we got minor 7, root, minor 3, 4, 5. All right, and then in the next area, minor 7, root, minor 3. And the reason why I'm using different note names or numbers for this is because what's happening is that all of these are different relationships to the root now, because we're in the minor key. So minor 7, root, minor 3, 4, and then 5. This actually ends up being a little bit more useful for most people. All right, if I was to, let's switch to a, we'll do one of the minor ones. A minor. All right. So now, if I'm playing, I can take any of those phrases. And I can play these ideas through all 3 octaves. And because I'm doing that, I can play longer phrases that make more sense. But, you know, the reality is that a lot of times people go, oh, well, C major and A minor are the same thing, so I can just play the same licks or notes. But the reality is that while they're the same physical notes, because you're playing over like an A minor chord in this case, right? That note's the root, and then the way every other note reacts is very different. Right, that's the root of the C chord. It doesn't feel as resolved as the A in this, but if I go back to the C shape, then that's going to be the resolution point. That's where your phrases are going to want to end, because that's the key. Cool. And obviously, you can take this and, you know, I can take an idea now because, and with the pentatonic scale, you only have so many notes, and as they repeat all over the fretboard like that, you start seeing where an idea will repeat. So then at that point, I'm not even thinking about those scale patterns, just the fact that I know what that phrase is, and then I know how to reproduce it in like 42 other places on the fretboard. It's not as complicated as it seems, because you're learning, at this point, you're learning the fretboard in these smaller chunks. You know, it always goes back to, I had a college teacher years ago. It was not about this particular situation, but it was about the idea that we had to do something over the period of a semester, and we would always end up trying to cram all 16 hours of this activity in the last 2 days before grading ended, and not learn anything. You know, and he basically said, hey, you know what, if I walk an elephant up to you and said, eat this elephant, what would you say? You'd say you can't eat an elephant. It's physically bigger than you many times. It won't fit in your stomach. But if we had an elephant steak every day, over the course of the semester, you'd eat the elephant. You could eat something that size. Kind of a gross analogy, but the reality is all of this stuff, anything that you learn on the instrument has to be learned in a digestible fashion. You have to be able to take the information in and make use of it in small enough bits that you can comprehend it. When we learn, and I was guilty of this when I was a kid, and I was guilty of this as a teacher originally, you'd give somebody a sheet full of scale patterns and say, if you learn all these, you can solo over this song. Not really realizing that it was so hard to make music out of that, because I didn't really understand how any of the notes worked. It was just like, hey, I can play up and down the scale. You know, I can do all this kind of stuff, but none of it really sounded like a melody. None of it really made any sense musically. And it wasn't until I started being able to break things down that I was able to do something with it. One of the Actually, I got together with my more recent college teacher over the weekend. He lives nearby, and we did a socially distanced jam. The first time I've been able to make music with another person in since March 13th. It was awesome. Actually, we just played jazz and guitar, which I'm terrible at, but yeah, he was the one that really got me thinking about this idea that music is a bunch of elements, and if you kind of examine one element at a time, um, you can utilize this information a little bit better than if you just try and like learn like an entire Charlie Parker solo and then look at that. It's too hard to look at it. It's forest and trees kind of stuff. So like one of the things that I've been teaching a lot, and there's the Miles Davis solo. If we've got this backing track, I love how Miles will do this thing. He'll start with just a few notes. All right, he's just, instead of playing all of A Dorian or any of the other scales you can use over this, he's just playing basically root 5 root. Okay, and then the next phrase, right? He's playing more of the chord and the fourth, right? And then the next thing he does, he actually gives you the idea that this is a Dorian scale by playing those notes. And then he gets out of that octave. I don't remember how it goes. But basically, learning that solo and realizing that Miles was creating structure out of giving you a little bit of the sound at a time was really cool. The idea that you're always developing something. So when I play a guitar solo like that, this is basically one chord, right? These one chord vamp tracks like that. And they're basically for working on stuff like this. But if I was really playing a solo over this, I would start real simple, leave a little bit of space. Alright, and then play a couple notes that give you an idea what the harmony are, but, not too much. Alright, give you a little bit more. And then, gradually, over the course of the solo, you unveil more of the sound that you're really trying to give everybody. And over that, it makes it easier to play longer solos because you've got more to say. As opposed to me just going, hey, you know what, A minor. That's everything right there. You've just given everything that you can. You also don't have any space to develop lines or ideas or phrases. You have all of these elements in a solo that allow you to bring your narrative forward or to tell your story. And one of them is the amount of space that you use, because if you leave a lot of space in the beginning, as you're trying to make it more interesting, you can fill that space up later. But if you've used all that space up in the beginning, it feels kind of weird to not do that. You can play more complicated harmonies. You can do, there's just a lot of things that you can do over time, textures and things like that. Okay, so Travis said, how do you know whether to use a Dorian or a natural minor against the song in a minor key? So here's the thing about modes, is that a mode by itself works great over like one chord. Like this backing track is just A minor, right? But as soon as you have other chords put in there, it starts defining a functional key. Right? So modes are kind of useless for most of the songs we play over because our songs have chord progressions. Right? So if I'm playing over an A, right, so A minor, F, C to G. I can't play Dorian over that because I've got an F chord. Right? The Dorian has an F sharp in it. Right? That only really works if you've got A minor and then maybe a D major. Like, right, Santana, right? This is kind of the Santana secret chord progression. If you've got a vamp where it's just one or maybe two chords that don't rule out a scale, like if you go on A minor to D minor, right, that immediately says that you have to play natural minor against it, because the Dorian has a major 6. It's got this note here, right? So if your chord is doing this, right, and then that scale, you know, it just doesn't work, whereas you're playing the major, right? But if it's just like someone's going like A, something like that, you can play whatever you want. So this backing track is just A minor, right? So I can play, right? There's the natural minor, there's the Dorian, right? I can play melodic minor with the major 7. I can play harmonic minor with the minor 6 and the major 7. All right, all that stuff happens because it's a blank canvas, and that's the idea. Like with So What with Miles Davis, you know, you're dealing with just a D minor chord for 16 bars, right? So you can play Dorian over that. You can play natural minor if you want. Depending on the chords that are being comped against it. You can play all those other scales. You can play a blues scale. Right? None of that really works against you. But as soon as you start having... Can you guys tell it's trash day, by the way? Trash truck is here outside. But as soon as you start having other chords in there, the idea of modes is kind of... it's done for, right? Because those other chords in chord progressions that we're used to, they say, hey, it's either a major key or a minor key, and then you're playing natural minor or you're playing major, right? Does that make sense? All right, so that's one way to look at it, Jeff, because Dorian is the second mode of any major scale, right? So like A Dorian, it's also all the same notes as G major, so there's your major there, all right? But then you can also do that in natural minor, because A minor, all right, A is the 6th chord in C major, right? So the 5th chord in C major would be G major, which is also major. Like, so in both those you've got that. The one thing that is different between natural minor and Dorian is the chord of 4th up. Like when you're playing a blues, the 4 chord. If it's major, then you're playing in a Dorian. If it's minor, then you're playing natural minor. Let me drop a couple links in here for you guys. Some of the lessons that I've done, which is my basic guitar. See, with the holiday, usually I don't have the trash truck today, so guitar lessons. Okay, so let me find a couple things for you. I'll drop them here in the chat. This lesson here, yeah, I talk about basically how you can take your minor pentatonic scale and add notes to it to get the different mode sounds. And same thing with this one. Right? I think one's major, one's minor, if I remember correctly. Meanwhile, I just bookmark these guys. I don't know if the live chat will survive the end of the live stream. The other thing is I've got this one here is a good lesson, because what it does, no problem, Travis. This one here basically gets you thinking about what these notes do against the chord. It's the ear training one. It's basically just against a major, but it really gets you kind of tuned into the fact that in a scale, some notes are going to be static and other notes are going to have movement or energy. Yeah, so the Santana rule, what you guys are thinking about, There's even a joke. Was it Frank Zappa had a song called "Variations on a Secret Carlos Santana chord progression" or something like that. It's like A minor to D major, right? The only song that really notably alters that is when he does that song with Rob Thomas. That I don't remember the name of that song. It came out like 20 years ago. But it goes A minor to E7 for a lot of it. And he actually plays harmonic minor, right? Because it fits the scale there. I don't remember. I don't remember the name of it. But anyway, but that song, that's like the one Santana song where he learned a new scale. Smooth. Thank you, Terry. That was good. But other than that, yeah, typically you're thinking Dorian or minor pentatonic with Santana. The lesson play, easiest thing to do is I'll give you the lesson playlist with like all of the lessons in it. And for some reason we're playing.
In this lesson, we're going to do what I consider.
That's the major lesson playlist. But the other one, the modes lesson, where'd it go? Home. Okay, so this one right here, I think this one will probably be the one that the questions you guys are asking about how this stuff, like how to choose whether or not to play a mode. That's the last one I just placed. That's the one I think that will answer the most questions for you guys. Okay, so let me back up. Good. The Dorian Explorian, I like that. True. You're welcome, Travis, Jeff. All right, cool. This is going well. Yeah. So anytime, if you have a one chord vamp that you're playing over, you're free to play whatever you want, you know. And for me, I love the idea of starting with the pentatonic for real simple phrases, and then adding things to it gradually to develop the solo. Long solos are hard. Yeah, you know, the deal with this is that there's no real rules, right? A lot of these are guidelines as to what works in the ways that your expectations work, because you know, we've grown up in this system of music that, you know, functional harmony, which is when we're talking about playing in keys, and modal music, which could be you know, 20th century jazz or rock music, or you know, music from a lot of other cultures. You know, we expect to hear music a certain way, so then we learn this theory, but the theory really, there's no law. You're not going to get fined for playing the wrong thing, and sometimes just playing the wrong thing sounds great. So you know, so here's our A minor again, right? And I could play totally inside, right? But maybe I want to make it more interesting. That little bit right there, I'm literally playing A minor and then moving up a fret, which is, you know, A sharp or B flat minor, and then back down. Right? So completely wrong chord or scale, but it provided me with some kind of weirdness that made me happy. You know, you're trying to create tension and then resolve it. And that idea of tension and resolution, I think, is pretty core to everything we do, right? So if I'm playing a real simple idea, right, that's the fourth. So that's a note in the minor pentatonic. It's not in the but if I go down to the minor third, which is the chord tone, you feel a little bit of resolution, or down to the root, right? So anything that you play is going to feel somewhat good against the chord or resolved, or it's going to sound really tense and need resolution a lot faster, right? So here's A sharp, right? If I just sit on A sharp, it never resolves and it sounds wrong to a certain extent, right? But I just played a Phrygian mode over that, which has the A sharp in it, or B flat. Right, and because I used it in a way that worked with your expectations, with your ear's expectations. Right, now suddenly I get kind of a Spanish sound. But I didn't spend all my time sitting on that really tense note that wants to resolve. Right? You know, you can play this stuff and find notes. Right, that's the major 6, that's the Dorian note. I can sit on that, right? It'll sound more settled if I go down to the 5th note of the scale or up to the minor 7th, because those are notes that are in the chord, but it's not really that tense. If I play the minor 6th, you feel that already. Right? That wants to continue falling down into a chord tone. Right? So your scale choices really depend on how uncomfortable you're trying to make people. Right? So I'm playing over a minor chord. Alright, if I play major, I don't know if I'd ever find a use for that. If we go back to the major sound though, the cool thing about the major tracks is I can also play dominant sounds. Right, so here's C major. So I can play the major pentatonic over the whole thing. It's all happy, rainbows, sunshines, right? If I add the major scale, I've got that 7 that wants to resolve, that's color, the 4th that wants to resolve. Right? So there's a few notes of contention there. Right? I can play a Mixolydian scale, which makes it basically a dominant chord, which I get away with because there's no 7th in the backing track. Right, now suddenly, you know, I've got this dominant sound, and it works. Or I can, alright, so that's a flat 5 or sharp 4. That makes it Lydian sounding. I'm just getting different sounds. Right, I'm basically creating new worlds over this chord because I'm not playing anything that interferes with the backing track. Because it's just a C major chord, real simple C chord, right? And then these other notes I can actually utilize, so I know that, hey, if I want that Lydian sound, I can play that note here and get it. Or if I want the Mixolydian sound, I can play that note there, right? I'm basically implying those sounds, right? I can combine right, there's Lydian dominant. And I can play whatever the hell I want. I can play minor pentatonic. Alright, I can play blues. Alright, I can try, don't particularly care for the Phrygian over that, but you have, they call it Phrygian dominant. It's a mode of the harmonic minor scale. As long as you're paying attention and your phrases make sense to whatever the chord is you're playing over, you can get away with murder. You can play anything. I can play purely chromatically and just play geometric shapes. Here's me. And as long as I resolve it back to the chord, I'm good, right? So I just took one of my favorite sounds to mess with. It's this idea I'm taking a fully diminished arpeggio and I'm just playing major triads off each of those notes. Alright, as long as I resolve, the ear gets what it wants, right? Or I resolve to the major, right? I just played that whole minor pentatonic, half step up, back to minor pentatonic and key, half step up, and then major triad, what the chord is, and now it all kind of falls into place. I was told once that no note is ever wrong and no line ever fails as long as you stick the ending. All right, you can play it whatever weird shit you want to play, and as long as you end up basically resolving it in a way that makes sense, everything you play will have logic to it, right? But it's not until you hear the last note and you can hear the whole thing almost in retrospect that it makes sense. I can play over the C major chord. Let's just pick a weird ass chord progression. All right, so I'm going to play B flat minor 7. So basically, I'll play a jazz tune in a different key over this and then resolve it. So the chords are going to be B flat minor 7, E flat dominant. Basically, it's autumn leaves a half step up. A flat major, D flat major, and then G, C, F, and then I'll resolve it into the C. Right, all was forgiven as soon as I hit that C major, right? But if I didn't do that, or if I just played notes that didn't make any sense, or I just played these scales as physical patterns without any regard to the sound I'm playing over, it would just sound like garbage. And I think that's the thing. Let me go through this. It's not wrong if you do more. That there's a lot of logic to that, because if you do it twice, you're creating a developing idea. If you play it once and you walk away from it, it sounds like failure. It reeks of failure. But if you play it twice and then the second time you resolve it, like I just talked about, you're good to go. Bending into a note is the same thing. Yeah, because all you're doing is you're taking, like if I'm playing a phrase, right, B flat to C, and then I'm going from B flat and bending the whole step up to C, it's the same thing. And that's the one thing I try and get people to understand. You know, is you have to treat your bends as more than just physical movements, right? They have to actually help create that melody. So as long as you're aware of what you're bending to, you're golden. Guitar players, we get away with murder because we learn a lot of licks, like, right? So like Stairway to Heaven, you learn, and that works for everything in a minor key, right? It's a physical thing. No one ever says, hey, you're bending the fourth note up to the fifth note of the scale for that bend. It's just, we do that. And some people can hear it and bend it in tune, and some people can't. But generally, this idea that you're actually hearing the harmony you're playing over and you're listening to whether or not the line has tension and needs to resolve, or does, like all of those things don't, you know, we don't really learn them in the beginning, especially guitar players of our generation and age. But now, you know, I really spend a lot of time thinking about, like, how does this note sound over this chord? And it's very instantaneous. I'm not like having this kind of like, self, what do you think about this? But you feel whether or not the line is resolved, right? And I can think of, you know, I've been to enough school and I've kind of like worked this stuff out enough that I can play all this weird stuff and not really have to think too analytically about it. Because as soon as you have to think when you're improvising, it's game over. You're just dead in the water. It's like they say, sharks have to swim always to keep breathing. If they stop swimming, they drown and they die. I don't know if that's a wives' tale or not. Music's kind of like that, though. You have to be able to keep moving. So anything that you learn can't be something you have to think about when you're playing. You have to internalize it and be able to hear it and then kind of move forward, all right? And things like these bends, it's the same thing, right? You know, it's, you know, basically you're making melodies by articulating the notes a little bit differently. All right. So that's that. We did that. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. I feel bad for anyone who took lessons from me in the first decade of my teaching. It took me a long time to figure out how to communicate to people. This is exactly right. The single chord backing track, it never, it's only one chord really. I mean, there's, I think it's like C and then F, like that, but that's really just used as a passing chord. It doesn't really give you harmony. All right, so you're right. Yeah, these, and that's, the first thing I did when I started this channel is I did um, 24 backing tracks, and one of them was just a major chord vamp in all 12 keys, and one of them was a minor chord vamp in all 12 keys that you could practice with this way, because that was like one of those things that you could find like all of the popular keys, E, A, D, G. People had those, but nobody had like D flat or C sharp. Yeah. And what I wanted is to be able to, not only for my own practicing, but for my students, give them something where they can, it was bland enough that they could play or practice whatever they needed in any key. All right, so that's the idea behind these single chord playlists. And actually, right now, they're the most popular things on the channel. They get the most viewing time because people have kind of started realizing, hey, I can practice in these keys for 20 minutes. I can just sit here and jam, which is really helpful. But yeah, you've hit on the reason why we do that. Yeah, Travis, I can I can kind of get away with murder. It depends. Over simple things, I feel very comfortable. If I have to start playing more complicated chord progressions, I just don't play enough like jazz, real jazz, to do stuff like that. But I've got my bag of tricks I can get away with murder with. Thank you, Steve. How are we doing? You guys have any other questions? I feel very energized this morning. It's a very good first live stream because you guys have a lot of stuff to contribute. These live streams can go one of two ways. One of them is like today. You guys have questions and I can answer them, and then that makes other questions happen. And then sometimes it's like I'm like, hey, let's talk about this. Or I'm gonna jam for a while, So I do appreciate you guys participating. How do you guys like the guitar sound today? I know it doesn't sound like much. It's just that blue note pedal. So there's the clean sound. A little bit of the pedal. I kind of like having these not so dirty, lead sounds that just have a little bit of audio catch up on them. New comments. Steve, well, hopefully if I do something enough times, I get I get it figured out. So I'm gonna have I sold a whole bunch of stuff before right when the pandemic was happening, because I knew I wasn't gonna be playing many gigs, and I was tired of a lot of stuff. And not that I'm playing any gigs anytime soon. It's still not going to happen, but I'm starting to put my live rig back together. My big pedal board is back here in pieces, and my little one's down here. But I've been buying pedals, so I'm gonna have some pedal demos coming up, which is gonna be kind of fun. What's going on when songs change key in the middle of the song? That could be anything, but typically certain key changes happen all the time, right? And one of them is the idea that, like, if we're in C major, remember I was talking about how C major and A minor have all the same notes, right? A minor is a mode of C major, right? A lot of times in a song, the easiest way for a key change to happen is for someone, if say you're playing in C, right? They'll go to that natural minor, right? Because it's different enough without having without being too jarring, and then it's very easy to transition back into the relative major key. Sometimes you'll have where a song, I always call this the Bon Jovi or the musical theater modulation, where everything goes up a whole step or a minor third, where they're basically taking the whole song, let's see. We're halfway there. Whoa, living on a prayer. Right. So that song is in E minor, and then it transitions up a minor third, up 3 frets. Same. Oh, we're halfway there. Whoa, living on a prayer. All right. And all it does is that basically the song is run out of steam to that point. So when they go up a whole step or a half step or a minor third like that, basically it just gives the song a little bit more interest, a little bit more payoff at the end. So there's that kind of key change too. Um, a lot of times key changes have to make sense musically. There's usually a thing behind it. If it's too jarring of a key change, it doesn't make sense for most listeners. People aren't going to want to listen to that. Once again, there's no rules with this, but if you're playing pop music, those key changes can be one of those two. Um, I'm trying to think. Name a song that changes keys. Let's do this. Give me some examples. I'm trying to think of something that's not one of those where you're going like relative keys or the whole step change. You almost never hear a song key change down a little bit because then that kind of takes all the energy out, right? Usually you'll key change up. The other thing is that over songs where you're singing, key changes have to make sense for the vocalist. So typically you don't have any real radical key changes on vocal tunes because people still got to sing this stuff. that's the other thing that's kind of important. Thank you, Travis. I always say this thing about the Sharks, and sometimes I wonder if I'm just making shit up. 251. If you're in a jazz key, definitely that's kind of the way to define a new key. You hear it in blues tunes. Pop and rock, not quite so much. Pedals I'm getting the most mileage out of right now. The J Rocket, the Dude pedal. Doesn't sound. That's that guy right there. This guitar is kind of bright. Oh, because the treble's turned all the way up. I must have bumped it. I did something here. Oh, everything got bumped up. So with the Stratocaster pickup, if I needed to play rock or Telecaster, it's good for the saturated lead sounds. And if I turn it down, it cleans up. If I turn down the pedal, it cleans up really good. I'm liking this Blue Note pedal. The Blue Note pedal and the 45 caliber, the other thing I've got on the board right now. These are basically for my small rig, like with the deluxe reverb. And then on the big rig, I just got a J Rocket Archer that I like a lot. I'm curious. A lot of this stuff I won't really know how much I'm going to use it until I actually start playing gigs and have to put in music. But the stuff, it all sounds great. I use the Origin Revival Drive less than I would expect. The thing with that Revival Drive is that it feels really good. It sounds marginally better than pedals half its price, so it's not worth getting the big one. Yeah. Well, like Whitney Houston, the Dolly Parton song, "I Will Always Love You." There's that one big moment in that song. I can't play songs like that on my channel because I'll have copyright issues. But I think I know the one you're talking about. And that's like the whole Bon Jovi idea where everything kind of like moves up enough so that like there's this big payoff. And then for her, it gets her in that giant belting range where, because that song, that "I Will Always Love You," starts off with like, all right, she's in this like quiet part of her register a little bit lower, but then at that point where it modulates, she's able just to she hits the nitrous and basically she's able to sing bigger, higher, louder, and it's got way more impact. Whereas if they just kept it in the same key, okay, we've heard this already, you know, and it allows her to utilize a different part of her voice. Um, yeah, I go back and forth. Most of my sounds are cleaner rather than dirtier and use the amp, but sometimes I have to have crunchy stuff. Spooky. Atlanta rhythm section, not my friend. My girl, yeah. Does my girl modulate? I got sunshine. I'd have to listen to it, man. I don't remember the modulation. Yeah, Whitney had an incredible instrument, and then she ruined it. I remember seeing her shortly before she passed on Good Morning America, and her voice was just wrecked. Um, you know what? It's funny is I use delay more than reverb for an ambient sound. So like right now, um, let's cheat here. So what I'm playing through. Here we go. Um, is this little pedal board, and I love this El Capistan delay pedal because it's got this. It's a tape echo, and or an emulation of a tape echo essentially. But it's got this thing where you hear the delay, and I can play, and it doesn't get in the way of what I'm playing, but it adds depth. If I turn it off, let's do it with some. But if I turn it off. Yeah, so for me it functions. So I use it kind of as an ambient sound, almost like most people would use reverb. Um, the only reverbs I get along with, occasionally, like I've got a couple of deluxe reverbs, a couple of vintage ones, and I like leaving a little bit of reverb on there, but I almost would prefer to use like an analog sounding delay as the reverb. Occasionally I'll have to play tunes where like you're on cover gigs like that. I can't do it because I won't set up on here, but that it's Shut Up and Dance song where it's got like that U2 kind of like dotted eighth delay kind of thing. Or Streets Have No Name. Songs like that, they're really fun to play with as long as you're playing with a drummer who plays solid time, which I don't always get to do. But yeah, I do love playing parts like that. I don't get to do them as much as I would like, partially because I don't play as much music that lends itself to that anymore, and then partially because I'm usually in situations where I have to fill in more space. I can't play direct guitar parts all the time. I have to make stuff up that fills space a little bit differently. Yeah, I'm getting the feeling I'm gonna be using that Archer a lot. I finally, after owning, this is like the third Klon type pedal I've owned, and it's the first one that I've not hated. I had a Soul Food and I had a Tumnus, and they never did anything for me. But the Archer actually, it just does it right. I really like that. My girl has the key change. I can't even hear it in my head, but I know what you're talking about. From C up to D, right? Yeah, so that's like the typical like modulation up to kind of keep the song rolling. Yeah. Yeah, but that's so most of my delay use is this. I don't know if you can hear it over the stream, that kind of ambient. All right, and it's cool because it's got the depth to it, but it doesn't really clutter up the sound of anything else that I'm trying to play. That always drove me nuts when I only had digital delays like the Boss stuff. You know what? I have this thing about wireless, and it's hilarious because it's. I haven't tried a wireless system since the 80s. And if you know anything about consumer wireless guitar systems from the 80s, is that they just sounded like crap. They just killed all your signal. They didn't have good preamps in them or whatever. Um, and I haven't used one since. And then, to be honest, I don't really play on big enough stages where it's a concern. I mean, if I was like touring, if I was doing like a show where I needed to have a lot of mobility, then I would look into a wireless. There's a lot of like inexpensive consumer wireless deals, like Line 6 makes them and things like that people really seem to like. The old ones had a lot of latency to them, which kind of weirded me out. I didn't particularly care for that sort of thing. A lot like with the early digital modelers and stuff like that, where you'd play a note and it would take a second. It didn't feel very natural. I'm sure the technology has improved over that. For me, it's like one more thing that can die on stage. And honestly, like, I play on stages where it's hard for me to stand and fit my amp and my pedal board and my vocal monitor on stage. Yeah, so it's never been a practical thing for me to have. I just, at this point in time, I kind of prefer having a cable. Who knows? At some point in the future, I may need to. I bought actually about a year ago. I bought my first set of in-ear monitors, thinking I was going to start needing that more and more, and then discovered that I don't like using in-ear monitors either. I guess I'm a little bit of a dinosaur with that stuff. You know what? I generally tend to not overdo it with the effects. Like if I have an effect on, you hear it. It's very specific. If I, so my very first real amp was a Marshall Jubilee half stack, 100-watt half stack. All right, and Travis remembers this. Like, and basically I had one sound, which was distortion. And then I kind of bought into this crap that I needed to have a rack system in the early 90s. And so I sold it like a moron. I should have kept that amp. And I bought a Mesa studio preamp, and I had a bunch of effects. And early 90s, like, it seemed like everything had to have delay and reverb and chorus. And I never had a good sound. It just sounded like crap for like 3 years. And then I had to play a wedding gig and didn't want to bring this giant rack system with a 4x12 stereo cab and all this shit. So I borrowed a super reverb from my friend Travis here. And it was like a 74, 75 super reverb. And suddenly everything was easy to get a sound out of, you know? I was like, hey, I don't have anything except for reverb going on and an overdrive. I like a distortion pedal or a tube screamer. And it was an eye-opener. And then I kind of realized that, like, you know, effects, the more stuff you pile on, the smaller your sound gets, for the most part. Unless you're trying to do something real specific that way. And sometimes I'll program sounds that have all that stuff because I need it for a certain thing. Like tremolo and phaser and maybe a little bit of overdrive all together to make a certain kind of sound. But most of my sounds typically are pretty plain because otherwise they just turn into this wash that just gets lost on stage. It's really, it's hard to manage. So it's pretty rare when I run into that problem. Also, I don't have a lot of noise issues. Having an isolated power supply and good cables is a big part of it. Sometimes you can't get away from it. This guitar I can play in most venues. Occasionally I'll play in a place where it's just surrounded by neon beer signs and TV sets. And then I have a lot of noise, and then I have to pull out a humbucker guitar like my Les Paul or my McFeely. You know, it's hard sometimes. Like, I never play my Strat on bar gigs because that guitar especially, even more than other Strats, my Tokai really has a lot of, it's susceptible to RF noise. And if I'm playing anything that's like even remotely overdriven, it's the, you know, the end of the line. It's horrible. Yeah. Your Bad Cat has a plate reverb or a spring reverb? I'm curious because plate reverbs are usually really big, physical things. Um, yeah, it's funny because once I knew that I wasn't gonna be playing gigs, I started doing like live streams, like digital or virtual happy hours. I was calling them like every other musician who suddenly had their entire performing schedule pulled away from them. And I did it for about a month. Um, and then that gets old too. I mean, people get tired of signing into those things and hearing it, play the same music. There's a million people doing them. Even like right now, there's a million guitar players doing what I'm doing right now, which is talking about lessons and gear and stuff. But not being able to actually play gigs has been this really weird thing for me because there's this negative part of it, which is, hey, I play guitar because I want to play guitar and make music with other people. But the year has been interesting in that it's allowed me to kind of tear everything down and start over again in certain regards, musically, guitar wise, kind of how I think about stuff. But now I'm kind of in this point where I'm like, hey, let's gear up because hopefully by spring I'll be able to start playing gigs again. Let me have a couple things come up here. All right, Travis, it was good kind of talking to you. Bye, Travis. Anybody else got any questions? It's actually time for Terry's lesson here in the near future, so. I do have to say I really love this Blue Note. I've only literally I turned it on this morning when I plugged it in. But it's a great low gain pedal. I don't know. I think it's going to stay on this board because I've got the Archer on the other one. Interesting. All right, guys. I'm going to... Terry, are you ready for your lesson? Let me ask you that. Real quick, before I wrap stuff up, digital plate. Gotcha. Like I was saying, the next few lessons are rhythm guitar and chord oriented. There's gonna be a lot of new backing tracks. I think I've kind of discovered people like the single chord backing tracks. So I'm gonna do some kind of funkier ones. I think, which also kind of go along with some of the lessons I'm doing. Take care, sir. Thank you for hanging out. Please, if you like this, go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you actually get notifications. I noticed I've got like 900 something subscribers, and then as I was looking in the analytics, not so many people have the notifications on there. So what happens is that not everybody knows when these lessons happen. So make sure you guys do that. You can always ask questions in the comments of these videos afterwards, or you can go to the forum. Let me just post a link for the forum. I won't. Oops. Hang on a second here. I'll post a link to the part of the forum where there are lessons. I accidentally. The forum's got all kinds of stuff, guitar stuff and fun stuff and whatnot. But thanks, Chuck. It was good. Yes. Definitely. And like Steve just says, I'm on every Wednesday in the evening. Good. Hope you had a good holiday, Chuck. a little bit. My strength is electric guitar. I'll probably end up doing some acoustic stuff just because I need to. Um, I'm not a very strong solo acoustic player though. I kind of know where my weaknesses are. So um, when I find something that I feel is worth your time to do, I will definitely do it. But unfortunately, I'm not your go-to guy for the power acoustic lessons. So okay, well, thank you all, and I will see you. I'll be back on Wednesday and next Saturday. Take care, guys.